Hello, YouTube. I am Damian Moody. I also go by Cashmere Majesty or Red Riding Hood. And I'm back with a Happy Black History Month live stream. Um, and in today's live stream, hold on. Oh, sorry. Y'all gotta forgive me. Y'all just came back from outside. So that's why I sound like I'm a little out of breath because I was running. But I'm back with a Happy Black History Month live stream. Like I've been telling y'all throughout the month, I'm gonna try to get on here and bring y'all Black History stories, whether it's about a famous person or a Black History hero or heroine. And most recently, Jesse Jackson has passed away, so I decided to pay tribute to him, share my condolences with his family, and read his bio on YouTube. His bio is pretty long, so I have been pausing here and there and having to come back. So, interested in reading the bio with me on Jesse Jackson, please feel free to click through my previous live streams where you can hear me read. I do apologize if I mispronounce certain stuff. It's in another language or I don't know how to pronounce certain first names or last names of certain people. Please forgive me. But I will try my best to get through the rest of this bio. Also, feel free to share your condolences in the comment section of any video. But yes, in this video, we will be reading about Jesse Jackson. For those who may know, I love Black history. I love reading about it and learning new facts. I've been a fan of reading Black history stories since I was younger. It's something that reminds me of my great grandfather and my great grandmother who kept my head in the books. And once they learned of my strong interest in reading about Black history facts and stories, they had plenty of books that helped teach me different stories that the schools were too afraid to let me know about. So now that I got on my reading glasses, let's get back to Jesse Jackson. I'm trying to remember where I left. Hold on. I'm trying to remember where I left off at. I don't know. I had no idea where I left off at. Certain parts that I did remember reading, but I don't remember exactly where I left off at. All right, I'm gonna just go here. If I read it in previous live stream, please forgive me. Like I said, I don't remember where I left off at. So, like I said, please forgive me. I don't have the slightest idea. And I don't feel like going back to the last video, trying to remember where I left off at. So, we're going to start with activity between presidential campaigns. In January 19th, like I said, please bear with me, number one. And number two, go to the previous live streams. I'm not about to read this over. Go to the previous live streams if you're interested in hearing my Black History stories and hearing me read, and you want to know where I left off at. Please go back to the first few live streams of me reading about Jesse Jackson. So, in January 1985, concurrent with the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan, Jackson led several hundred supporters in a procession through downtown Washington to the grounds of Washington Monument. He stressed that they need to keep alive the hopes of those who have fallen through the safety net and challenged America to protect the poor. In April, Jackson led a rally to protest the sale of an elderly farmer farm of Kearney Trust Co. inside the Clinton County Courthouse, where he called a gathering of farmers, urban labor members, ministers, and urban blacks from Kansas City of Rainbow Coalition for Economic Justice. In June, Mayor of the District of Columbia, Marion Barry, introduced Jackson to the Weston Elementary School, where Jackson said that the number one threat to the development of their generation is drugs. In June 1986, Jackson delivered a commencement speech at Medgar Evers College, in which he bemoaned that many young people were experiencing an ethical collapse, a spiritual withdrawal, and escaping this reality through drugs, alcohol, sex without love, making unwanted babies, and turning on each other with violence. Later that month, after basketball player Len Bias died from cardiac arrest stemming from cocaine intoxication, Jackson and Representative Charles Rangel called for Reagan to announce a nationwide war on drugs and seek increased funding of federal anti-drug education programs in public schools. During the 1987 Chicago mayoral election, Jackson led an effort to get Chairman Paul G. Kirk to meet with the Cook County Party leaders in Chicago to prevent the campaign deterioration and avoid dissension and splintering of the Democratic vote. Jackson and his supporters charged that Chicago Democrats would do anything to prevent Harold Watson from being reelected, including campaigning for his Republican challenger. My bad, y'all. Checking something real quick. All right, this is 1988 presidential campaign. In early 1986, there was speculation that Jackson would run for president again in 1988. In March 1987, he formed the exploratory committee, making him the second potential candidate to do so after Gary Hart. By April 1987, I feel like I read some of this already. After previously having spent all of half a day in Iowa, Jackson had spent 6 days there throughout the year and moved his office to a rural part of the state instead of Des Moines, however you pronounce that. He stressed that farmers and businessmen were akin to unemployed blacks and being negatively affected by the Reagan administration economic policies. In July, Jackson met with former governor of Alabama, George Wallace, for half an hour, calling the former segregationist one of the most forward of any governor across the South in terms of the sharing of appointments with blacks and whites and women. And the tone of the administration had changed. The meeting was seen as Jackson testing support for a presidential bid. In September, Jackson attended a presidential candidates forum. He embraced the congressional black, is it caucus? I don't know how you supposed to pronounce that. Positions on education, employment, and defense, and was greeted with a chance of "Run Jesse Run" and "Win Jesse Win." Yeah, I read this already, but anyway, it is what it is. On the side, that's a picture of Jesse Jackson on the right with Kirk Anderson center and Decatur Bucky Trotter on the left during the Maryland legislative black cau- caucus, I think. Me in Annapolis, Maryland in 1988. Like I said, please excuse me if I'm pronouncing stuff wrong. You know, some things may be spelled one way and pronounced a different way. That's why I'm having trouble with that one word. Please forgive me. On October 11, 1987, Jackson announced his candidacy in the 1988 presidential election. At the time of his announcement, polling showed that he led in 9 of the 12 southern states that would hold primaries or caucuses in March and led the Democratic field at 27%. In November, Jackson announced that Speaker of the California State Assembly, Willie Brown, would serve as his campaign chairman excuse me, while political strategist Gerald Austin became his campaign manager. Later that month, Jackson announced that he would stop his tour of the Persian Gulf to attend the funeral of his friend, Mayor of Chicago, Harold Watson, before changing his mind. Jackson's campaign platform included a call for a single payer system of universal health care, higher taxes on the wealthy, and defense spending cuts intended to reduce federal budget deficits and increase education, housing, welfare, and child care, ratifying the Educational Rights Amendment an, an executive order to ban discrimination against gays and lesbians in federal agencies, the Army, and to recognize gay couples for spousal benefits, reducing the supply and flow of drugs into communities, the creation of the domestic version of the World Bank called the American Investment Bank would that would have the authority to sell government bonds to rebuild American infrastructure, suspending the development of the new nuclear weapons in order to eventually ban them altogether, in a very different relationship with the Soviet Union and involving a constructive partnership. In 1987, the New York Times called Jackson a classic liberal in the tradition of the New Deal in the Great Society. Jackson participated in the January 24 or University of New Hampshire debate, where he was noted as the one candidate who stayed away from most of the bitter exchanges as he assailed the Reagan administration. In the February 8th Iowa caucus, once again, please forgive me if I'm pronouncing that word wrong. I don't know if it's cautious or caucus. I don't know. Jackson came in fourth place behind Gephardt, Simon, and excuse me, the Kakis or the Kakis. Through though he had quadrupled his support there from his 1984 bid, after losing in New Hampshire and to the Kakis by the wide margin, Jackson was seen as having done well enough to argue that he had expanded his appeal to white voters. In the March 8 Super Tuesday contest, Jackson won Virginia, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Party leaders saw the results as indicating the beginning of a long three-way race between Dukakis, Jackson, and Gore. As the month progressed, Jackson won Alaska, South Carolina, and Puerto Rico. Jackson scored a surprising victory in the March 26 Michigan primary. The made him a front runner in the race and spurred party officials to actively contemplate that he could be the former Democratic Party chairman Robert S. Strauss said that his Michigan win showed that Jackson was has the kind of power we hadn't expected and was a real vulnerability for Dukakis' campaign. Jackson participated in the March 28th debate at Fordham University, where he was the only candidate greeted by applause and stressed that government intervention could end homelessness. Mayor of New York City Ed Koch supported Gore and attacked Jackson, saying that the Jews would have to be crazy to support his campaign and that Jackson lied about his role in the aftermath of King's assassination. The Caucus defeated Jackson in the New York primary in a distant third place finish, led Gore to drop out of the race. Koch later apologized in a letter expressing regret if racial or religious friction resulted in his comments about Jackson. Jackson narrowly lost the Colorado primary to Dukakis and was defeated handily by him in a Wisconsin primary the next day. Jackson, shown among Wisconsin's white voters, was significantly better than the 1984, but also notably lower than pre-primary polling had predicted. Sorry, I said depicted. It said predicted. The back-to-back victories established Dukakis as a front runner. Jackson and Dukakis debated each other one on one for the first time on April 23rd. Throughout May, Dukakis won more contests, and Jackson's own staff admitted he no longer could win the nomination. By the end of the Democratic primary, Jackson had received 6.9 million votes and won 11 contests, 7 provinces: Alabama, the District of Columbia, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Puerto Rico, Virginia, and four uh, ca- cautious um, Delaware, Michigan, South Carolina, and Vermont. The day after the last primaries, Jackson met with the caucus and they discussed some of Jackson's platform, such as the universal same day on-site voter registration and changing the rules for the winner-take-all delegate allocation. Jackson felt he deserved the caucus's consideration as a running mate. The caucus agreed, but added that Jackson was of no special or greater consideration simply because he finished second in the primaries. Polling in April found the caucus Jackson ticket would defeat Vice President George H.W. Bush, but that either alone would lose to Bush. The caucus picked Senator Lloyd Bentsen as his running mate, and Jackson responded that the caucus had a right to use an approach, making a strategic move to solidify his organization, and that his strategy was to keep hope alive, to keep focus in our campaign, to keep our delegates and supporters disciplined, detailed, and full of hope, to put forth the very best expression we can of support on Wednesday, July 20th at nomination time. The dispute between Jackson and Dukakis led Jackson to suggest former President Jimmy Carter would have to mediate their conflict, and they did not reach an agreement until shortly before the 1988 Democratic National Convention began. After Dukakis was nominated, Jackson appeared with Bentsen and Dukakis at a loyalty breakfast where Dukakis told Jackson supporters that he needed them. By September, former members of Jackson's campaign became involved in a dispute with the Dukakis campaign and the Michigan Democratic Party to obtain additional jobs, power, and money. According to a November 1987 New York Times article, most political analysts gave him more chance of being nominated, partly because he is black, partly because of his unretrenched liberalism. Jackson's campaign was also interrupted by allegations about his half brother Noah Robinson Jr.'s criminal activity. Jackson was often asked about Robinson, who was often called the Billy Carter of the Jackson campaign, but his past successes made him a more credible candidate, and he was both better financed and better organized than in 1984. The Washington Post wrote that while Jackson's support continued to flow predominantly from black districts, his support among white voters allowed him to claim that he is more than a one race candidate. Perhaps more to the point, no other candidate was able to generate anything like the total support that Mr. Jackson did. Jackson once again exceeded expectations as he more than doubled his previous results, prompting R.W. Apple of New York Times to call 1988 the year of Jackson. That is a picture on the side of Jackson speaking at the Goodwill Games in Settle, 1990. And this is stance on abortion. Although Jackson was one of the most liberal members of the Democratic Party, his position on abortion was originally more in line with pro-life views. Less than a month after the 1973 Supreme Court decision Roe versus Wade legalized abortion, Jackson began a push campaign against the decision, calling abortion murder and declaring that Jesus and Moses might not have been born if abortion had been available in ancient times. Jackson's strong rhetoric on abortion temporarily alienated one of his major supporters, T.R.M. Howard, a black physician who performed the procedure. In 1975, Jackson endorsed a plan for the constitutional amendment banning abortion. He also endorsed the Hyde Amendment, which bars the funding of abortion through the federal Medicaid program. In the 1977 National Right to Life Committee news report, Jackson argued that the basis for Roe versus Wade, the right to privacy, had also been used to justify slavery and the treatment of slaves on the plantation. Jackson decried that he believed was a casual taking of life and the decline in society's values. He later changed his views, saying that women have the right to an abortion and that the government should not interfere. In 1988, a pro-life opinion writer in the Washington Post wrote, Jackson supports federal funding of abortion and says moral positions shouldn't be imposed on public policy. Freedom of choice must prevail. He echoes the arguments that make Democrats the party of abortion. After the leak of the draft decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, Jackson compared the draft to Dred Scott versus Stanford, as both were preceded by disingenuous campaign to urge citizens to respect the decisions of the court as grounded in law, not politics. He predicted overturning Roe versus Wade would spark fierce politics. Politics. Damn. Battles over basic rights in the states, the Congress, the courts, and on the streets. In June 2002, the Supreme Court overruled Roe in Dobbs versus Jackson. Later political activities. 1990s. After District of Columbia Mayor Marion Barry was arrested, Jackson was under pressure to enter the mayoral race to replace Barry. While Jackson said he was not running for the position, he also said that he thought the public servants should never say never and they should never say forever. Jackson talked about running with his 1988 presidential campaign chairman Joel Ferguson, and Ferguson formally announced Jackson's decision not to enter the race the next day. Jackson, Jackson instead ran for office as shadow senator for a District of Columbia when the position was created in 1991, serving until 1997 when he did not run for a re-election. This unpaid position was primarily opposed to lobby the statehood for the District of Columbia. In 1990, Jackson attended a dinner honoring the 20th anniversary of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, where Bush spoke of the day of African American of it. Hold on. Where Bush spoke of the day an African American will one day be president and teased Jackson by invoking him when mentioning his visit with children in ghettos. Jesse, I'm talking about little kids. I'm not talking about 49-year-old guys. Let's not rush it. In November 1991, National Committee Chair Ron Brown reported that Jackson had told him that he would not enter the presidential primaries. A short time later, Jackson formally declared that he would not mount a third presidential bid and called for the creation of new Democratic majority. His decision was his decision not to run caused concerns for the future of the Rainbow Coalition, which New York Times wrote has only carried political clout in the years when Mr. Jackson has run for president. Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, installed Jackson on an open television microphone and called Jackson to apologize. Jackson said focusing on the comics was unhelpful and noted that Clinton was the only one of the then five Democratic presidential candidates who had not agreed to join Jackson on campaign trips highlighting housing, health, and education issues. On April 26, 1992, Jackson and Clinton had a 40-minute meeting in Clinton's hotel suite and emerged to announce that they are both committed to defeating Bush in a general election. Asked if he was ready to endorse Clinton, Jackson said, well, if he wins the nomination of our party, he would be well on his way. We need a new president and we need a new direction. We cannot afford any more of what George Bush represents. After Clinton became the likely nominee, Jackson appealed to the Democratic Party platform committee of neither go with the flow on capital punishment nor walk south on the right to work laws. Although Jackson promised to endorse the party's nominee, his comments were seen as direct toward Clinton. David S. Broder noted Jackson's lesson influence at the 1992 Democratic National Convention and contrasts him with Chairman Brown. At almost the same moment that Jackson learned he could no longer hold the Democratic Party and his nominee hostage to his demands, Brown was showing he would carry the party in its convention in his hands. In January 1992, Jackson began hosting the CNN talk show Both Sides with Jesse Jackson. The program featured guests representing opposite sides of a single issue and was among the few programs on CNN hosted by a liberal. Jackson was initially critical of Bill Clinton's moderate third way policies. According to journalist Peter Bernard, Clinton was petrified about the primary challenge for him. Jackson in the 1996 election, but Jackson became a key ally in oh y'all. But Jackson became a key ally in gaining African American support for Clinton and eventually became a close advisor and friend of the Clinton family. His son, Jesse Jackson Jr., was elected to the United States House of Representatives from Illinois. In the mid 1990s, Jackson was approached about being the United States ambassador of South Africa, but declined the opportunity in favor of helping his son run for the House. On August 29, 1993, Jackson joined gatherers in the Lincoln Memorial to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, walking arm in arm with United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Henry Cisneros and United States Attorney General Janet Reno. In September 1996, Jackson visited rapper Tupac Shakur in the hospital after he was bombed in a drive-by shooting. Jackson said the real issue was the violent culture we live in. The survival of the fittest was that too often calls for revenge. SF Gate criticized his remark as off the mark and characterizing Shakur as a victim of the violent society. In 1997, Jackson backed Al Sharpton in his bid for mayor in New York City, denouncing Alan Hvesky for refusing to support Sharpton in an event that he won the primary, calling it the worst conceivable time for polarizing statements and positions by responsible leaders. Sharpton lost the Democratic primary to Ruth Messinger, who lost the general election to incumbent Rudy Giuliani. In March 2000, Jackson criticized Giuliani's hand in the Patrick Dortmund shooting, saying that there was something that is not well about his response to unarmed people being shot by police. Mayoral spokesman Kirk Ritter responded, Jesse Jackson, Dove Hyken, and Alan Hvesky have joined the political pile on team being captained by Al Sharpton in the name of Hillary Clinton. Then there's a picture of Jackson, third from left, and Al Sharpton, third from right, at anti-impeachment rally in the U.S. Capitol in support of President Bill Clinton, fourth from left, December 17th, 1998. That's the picture. On November, hold on. In 1998, Clinton affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky became public, and his lying under oath about the affair led to an impeachment inquiry by the House. In an interview with the Washington Post, Jackson explained his opposition to Clinton's removal from office. The punishment of impeachment does not correspond to the nature of Mr. Clinton's lack of candor. What he did does not fit the definition of high crimes. It was a little crime. On December 17th, Jackson led a prayer vigil outside the U.S. Capitol for the purpose of increasing the visibility of those opposed to Clinton's impeachment. The House impeached Clinton the next day. Damn. I mean, y'all know what he did. On November 18th, 1999, seven Decatur, Illinois high school students were expelled for 2 years after participating in the brawl at a football game. The incident was caught on home video and became a national media event when CNN ran pictures of the fight. After the students were expelled, Jackson argued that the explosions were unfair and racially biased and called on the scoreboard to reverse his decision. There's a picture of Jackson outside the Florida Supreme Court in 2000. Ay, 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 ay. Oh, damn, I think I sent it to the wrong one. That wasn't it. What the hell? Okay. What the hell? Oh my god. This has been my damn nerve. Hold on, y'all. I'm trying to do something real quick. What the hell? This is getting my damn nerve. All right, there we go. Okay. Go on. Go on. My bad, y'all. I'm over here supposed to be reading about Jesse Jackson. And I'm over here and blacked out. I just need to take a break from reading because, like I said, this is a lot of reading. A lot. Hmm. Mm-mm-mm. I'm just deep in thought thinking about some stuff. That's why I took a break from reading. And I'm over here looking at stuff as well. But I'll be back. I'm about to take a break. I'll be back. I'll read more later.